Pay attention to what you're seeing in this footage. This shaky camera recording, captured by forestry worker Ramon Santos on his cell phone, shows something that wildlife experts initially refused to believe was real. Look closely at the massive serpent coiled on the forest path. Notice how grotesquely distended its body is in two distinct places. Those aren't natural curves. What Ramon didn't realize as he filmed this from 30 feet away was that he was documenting evidence of a double homicide. Inside that creature's body were two people who had vanished without a trace 9 days earlier. This is the story of how a monster hiding in plain sight became one of the Philippines' most disturbing cases, where the killer wasn't human, but the evil behind it absolutely was. You know that feeling when you're scrolling through social media and you see a couple living their absolute best life? Traveling to exotic locations, posting these breathtaking photos that make you think, man, they've got it figured out. For Marcus and Jade Chen, that was their reality. They weren't just living the dream, they were documenting every second of it for their 620,000 Instagram followers. Marcus was 36, born and raised in San Francisco, with this infectious enthusiasm for wildlife that made even the most boring nature documentary seem thrilling. He'd quit his corporate job in tech 3 years earlier to pursue photography full-time, and somehow, miraculously, he'd made it work. Jade, 32, had been a high school biology teacher before she joined Marcus on the road full-time. Together, they ran Wild Lens Adventures, a social media brand that had attracted sponsorships from camera companies, outdoor gear brands, and even a streaming service that was developing a nature documentary series with them. But here's what made them different from every other travel influencer couple out there. They went where others wouldn't dare. While most photographers stuck to national parks and guided tours, Marcus and Jade sought out the untouched, the unexplored, the places where you couldn't just show up with a selfie stick and expect to walk out with a viral post. They'd spent weeks in the Amazon, months documenting snow leopards in the Himalayas, and nearly a year tracking migration patterns across sub-Saharan Africa. In early March 2017, they set their sights on the Philippines, specifically the remote forests of Nueva Vizcaya province in northern Luzon. Their goal was ambitious: document the critically endangered Philippine eagle and the reticulated python in their natural habitat for an upcoming feature in Wildlife Conservation magazine. The assignment would take them deep into the Bambang Forest Reserve, an area so dense and unmapped that even local hunters avoided certain sections. "This is the content our followers have been begging for," Marcus told his younger brother David during a video call on March 8th. "Pristine jungle, rare species, zero tourist traffic. This is what we do best." David would later testify that he had a bad feeling about the trip. Marcus seemed almost too excited, like he wasn't taking it seriously enough. I asked him if they'd hired a local guide, and he said they didn't need one. They had GPS, satellite phones, all the tech. He said guides just slowed them down. On March 12, 2017, Marcus and Jade flew into Bayombong, the provincial capital, and spent 2 days purchasing supplies and securing permits from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. The permits authorized them for a 14-day expedition in a designated zone of the Bambang Forest Reserve, with strict instructions to check in via satellite phone every 48 hours. Local forestry officer Ernesto Valdez met with them on March 14th to review safety protocols. "I specifically warned them about the rainy season," Valdez would later tell investigators. "March through May, those forests flood, paths disappear, animals behave unpredictably. I showed them maps of approved trails and told them, very clearly, that there were areas marked as restricted for a reason." When pressed about what those reasons were, Valdez hesitated. "The official reason is environmental protection. Certain zones are breeding grounds for endangered species. But the locals, they'll tell you something different. They'll tell you about the old logging camps from the 1980s, the ones that were abandoned after too many workers disappeared. They'll tell you about pythons the size of buses. Most foreigners think it's superstition." Marcus and Jade began their trek on March 15th entering the forest from the eastern access point near the village of Villa Paraíso. They were carrying 4 cameras, camping equipment, 2 weeks of supplies, a satellite phone, GPS devices, and enough memory cards to document everything they might encounter. Their plan was to establish a base camp about 15 kilometers in, then conduct day expeditions to search for wildlife. Their first satellite check-in came on schedule March 16th at 6 p.m. Marcus reported that they'd found an excellent campsite near a stream and had already spotted several rare bird species. "The jungle here is incredible," he told the DNR monitoring station. "Untouched. We're exactly where we need to be." The second check-in on March 18th was equally positive. Jade's voice came through the satellite connection. "We found fresh python tracks near a clearing about 3 clicks north of camp, massive. We're talking 6, maybe 7 meters long based on the trail width. We're going to stake it out tomorrow." That was the last time anyone heard from them alive. When March 20th came and went with no check-in, the DNR monitoring station attempted to contact them 17 times over the next 6 hours. Every call went straight to voicemail. By March 21st, Ernesto Valdez had alerted the Philippine National Police, and a search and rescue operation was authorized. The first search team, consisting of 6 local rangers and 2 police officers, entered the forest on March 22nd, following the GPS coordinates from Marcus and Jade's last known position. What they found at the campsite sent the first chill down everyone's spine. The tent was still standing, perfectly intact, with all their gear inside. Cameras, laptops, even their satellite phone, which showed 17 missed calls, but had been deliberately powered off. The food supplies were untouched. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no indication that anything violent had occurred at the camp itself. But here's what made it even more horrific. Their boots were lined up neatly outside the tent entrance, and inside, their sleeping bags were unzipped and empty, as if they'd gotten up in the middle of the night and walked barefoot into the jungle. Lead investigator Lieutenant Domingo Reyes from the Nueva Vizcaya Police Provincial Office took over the case on March 23rd. "The scene made no sense," he explained during later testimony. "You don't leave your tent barefoot in a jungle at night. You don't power off your emergency communication device, and you definitely don't leave behind thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment if you're a professional photographer." Nothing about this added up to a voluntary departure. The search expanded dramatically. Over the next 5 days, more than 40 personnel combed a 10-square-kilometer area around the campsite. They found Marcus's baseball cap snagged on a tree branch about 200 meters north of camp. They found a trail of disturbed vegetation leading deeper into the restricted zone that Valdez had warned them about. And on March 27th, they found Jade's necklace, a distinctive silver chain with a custom pendant shaped like a camera, lying in the mud near an abandoned logging road. The discovery of the necklace shifted everything. The area where it was found was more than 4 kilometers from their campsite, deep in the restricted zone, in a direction that made no logical sense for them to have traveled. The logging road itself had been closed since 2004, completely overgrown, barely visible beneath decades of jungle reclamation. "That's when we started considering that something else might have happened," Lieutenant Reyes said. "We'd been searching for lost hikers. Now we were searching for bodies." Local villagers began sharing stories that the official search team had been trying to ignore. An elderly woman named Lita Mangawang, who lived on the edge of Villa Paraíso, claimed she'd heard screaming in the early morning hours of March 19th. "It woke me from sleep," she told investigators. A woman's voice, very far away, but the sound carried through the trees. She was screaming for help, then silence. Others reported seeing unusual python activity in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Hunter Pablo Domingo claimed he'd encountered a reticulated python near the old logging area in late February that was bigger than any snake has a right to be, maybe 9-10 meters long, with a body as thick as an oil drum. Herpetologist Dr. Sofia Reyes, no relation to Lieutenant Reyes, was brought in as a consultant on March 29th. She reviewed the evidence and witness statements with deep skepticism. Reticulated pythons in the Philippines can grow large, yes, but we're typically talking 5 to 7 meters maximum in the wild, she explained. The idea that one could take down 2 adult humans is extremely unlikely. These snakes are ambush predators. They target prey they can reliably subdue, usually animals much smaller than humans. But Dr. Reyes also acknowledged something that made everyone in the search team uncomfortable. If, and this is a significant if, a python of exceptional size were to encounter humans in a weakened or vulnerable state, particularly at night, particularly if those humans were separated, I can't say it's impossible, just extraordinarily rare. By April 1st, 2017, the search had become a recovery operation. Lieutenant Reyes made the difficult decision to inform Marcus and Jade's families that they were now presumed dead. David Chen flew to the Philippines immediately, accompanied by Jade's mother, Patricia Walsh. "I couldn't accept it," David told reporters who'd begun gathering as the story gained international attention. Marcus was too smart, too experienced to just die in a jungle. Something happened to them, someone did something to them. That someone theory started gaining traction when investigators discovered something disturbing on Marcus's laptop, which they'd retrieved from the campsite. The device was password protected, but forensic analysts in Manila were able to access it by April 3rd. What they found was a series of emails between Marcus and an encrypted account using the name Forest Guide 888. The emails dated back to February 2017, before Marcus and Jade had even booked their flights to the Philippines. Forest Guide 888 claimed to be a local expert who knew the Bambang Forest intimately and could show them locations where they could photograph rare pythons that tourists and researchers never see. The figure quoted a price of $5,000 for his services. Marcus had been cautious at first, asking for credentials and references. Forest Guide 888 responded with photos, images of massive pythons, rare birds, forest locations that looked genuinely untouched. The quality of the photos was poor, clearly taken on an older cell phone, but the content was compelling enough that Marcus eventually agreed. According to the email trail, they'd arranged to meet on March 18th at 10 p.m. at their campsite. Forest Guide 888 would take them to a location he called the breeding grounds, where they could observe and photograph pythons during their most active period. The last email from Marcus, sent on March 18th at 7:34 p.m., read, "We're ready. See you at 10. This better be worth $5,000. There was no response from Forest Guide 888. Lieutenant Reyes immediately began the process of tracing the email account. "This changed everything," he said. "We were no longer looking at an animal attack or people getting lost. We were looking at a potential luring, possibly an abduction, possibly murder with robbery as a motive. But here's the thing about tracking someone who knows how to stay hidden in the digital age. It's almost impossible when they're using encrypted services and accessing the internet from public locations." The forensic team determined that Forest Guide 888 had sent all emails from internet cafes in 3 different provinces, never using the same location twice, always paying cash, always avoiding security cameras. Meanwhile, the search teams continued combing the restricted zone, now with a new focus, finding any evidence of human involvement in the couple's disappearance. What they found instead, on April 8th, would change the entire trajectory of the investigation. Forestry worker Ramon Santos, age 43, had been part of the extended search operation, checking remote trails that even the main search teams hadn't reached. On that morning, he was walking along an abandoned logging road about 7 kilometers from Marcus and Jade's campsite when he saw something that made him stop dead in his tracks. Coiled on the path ahead was the largest python he'd ever seen in his 30 years working in Philippine forests. Ramon's first instinct was to back away slowly. That's basic survival protocol when encountering large snakes, but something about this particular python made him pause. The creature wasn't moving, wasn't reacting to his presence, and its body was distended in a way that looked almost unnatural. There were 2 distinct bulges, massive swellings that made the python's midsection grotesque and misshapen. Ramon pulled out his cell phone and started recording. The footage would later become the most important piece of evidence in the entire case. In the video, you can hear Ramon's breathing, hear his whispered curses in Ilocano. The python is approximately 8 to 9 meters long, with a girth at the widest points of nearly a meter. It's barely moving, just the slight rise and fall of breathing. And those two bulges, they're positioned about a meter apart, each roughly the size of a curled human body. "I knew," Ramon later testified. "I knew what I was looking at. I worked on farms as a boy. I've seen pythons eat pigs, goats, even a small carabao once. This was the same, but bigger, much bigger." Ramon didn't approach the snake. Instead, he marked the GPS coordinates on his phone and ran back to the nearest search team checkpoint, which was 3 kilometers away. By 11:30 a.m., Lieutenant Reyes, Dr. Sofia Reyes, and a full forensic team were en route to the location. What happened next was captured on police body camera footage. The team approached the python with extreme caution, using snake poles and protective equipment. Dr. Reyes confirmed what Ramon had suspected. The python had recently consumed very large prey, and based on the size and shape of the distensions, it was likely 2 separate items. "We need to contain this animal immediately," Dr. Reyes told Lieutenant Reyes on camera. "If what I think is inside that snake is inside that snake, we're looking at a crime scene, a living crime scene." The operation to capture the python took 4 hours. The snake was lethargic from its enormous meal, unable to move quickly, but still dangerous. Using specialized equipment and a veterinary team, they managed to sedate the creature and transport it to a secure facility at the DENR compound in Bayombong. The necropsy was performed on April 9th with full forensic documentation. Present were Dr. Reyes, Lieutenant Reyes, 2 veterinary surgeons, 3 forensic specialists from Manila, and a police photographer. David Chen and Patricia Walsh were offered the option to be present, but both declined. The procedure took 3 hours. What they found confirmed everyone's worst nightmare. Inside the python's digestive system were the partially digested remains of 2 human beings, identifiable through dental records, jewelry, and clothing fragments as Marcus Chen and Jade Chen. The discovery sent shockwaves through the Philippines and around the world. Within 24 hours, the story had gone international, with headlines screaming variations of "couple found inside giant python" and "Instagram photographers eaten alive." But for Lieutenant Reyes and his team, the confirmation of Marcus and Jade's deaths wasn't the end of the investigation. It was just the beginning, because here's what haunted everyone involved. Pythons don't hunt humans. They avoid us. Even the largest reticulated pythons in Southeast Asia, the apex predators of their ecosystem, don't view adult humans as prey. Attacks are defensive, not predatory. The idea that a single python had not only attacked, but successfully killed and consumed 2 adult humans in perfect health was, according to every herpetologist consulted, virtually impossible. Something else happened, Dr. Reyes insisted during an emergency meeting on April 10th. This snake didn't hunt these people. It scavenged them. Or, she hesitated, looking uncomfortable with her own theory, or they were presented to it. That theory, that Marcus and Jade had been killed or incapacitated by a human, then fed to the python, became the working hypothesis. It aligned with the mysterious Forest Guide 888, with the suspicious circumstances at their campsite, with the powered-off satellite phone. Lieutenant Reyes obtained a court order to exhume and examine the remains more thoroughly. Forensic pathologist Dr. Miguel Santos performed the examination on April 12th. Despite the significant decomposition and digestive damage, Dr. Santos was able to determine several crucial facts. First, there was evidence of blunt force trauma to Marcus's skull, inflicted before death. The injury pattern was consistent with being struck with a heavy object, possibly a rock or wooden club. Second, both victims showed signs of having been unconscious or already deceased when they were consumed. There were no defensive wounds on their hands or arms, no signs of the desperate struggle that would occur if someone were being eaten alive. Third, and most chilling, Toxicology reports showed traces of a sedative compound in both bodies, specifically remnants of benzodiazepines in the remaining tissue samples. They were drugged, Lieutenant Reyes told the assembled task force on April 15th. Someone drugged them, incapacitated them, and either killed them or left them for the python to find. This is murder. We're looking for a killer. The investigation pivoted hard. Every internet cafe in Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, and Isabela provinces was visited. Security footage was collected and reviewed. The task force was looking for anyone who'd been accessing encrypted email services around the dates of Forest Guide 888's communications. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On April 18th, a woman named Catalina Mendoza walked into the police station in Bayambong and asked to speak with Lieutenant Reyes. She was 34, worked as a cashier at a grocery store in the town center, and she was visibly terrified. "I think my cousin might have done something terrible," she told Reyes. Her cousin was Vicente Mendoza, age 41, a former forestry worker who'd been fired from the DENR in 2015 after being caught poaching endangered birds for the illegal pet trade. Vicente had been obsessed with foreign tourists, Catalina explained, particularly wealthy ones with expensive equipment. He called them walking ATMs, Catalina said, tears streaming down her face. He said foreigners came to the Philippines with more money in their camera bags than most Filipinos saw in a year. He said they were stupid, walking into jungles they didn't understand, that they deserved whatever happened to them. More importantly, Catalina had seen Vicente with a laptop in late February, bragging that he'd set up the perfect trap for some rich Americans who wanted to see pythons. She thought he was just talking nonsense the way he often did when he was drinking. But after seeing the news about Marcus and Jade, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vicente had been talking about them. Lieutenant Reyes obtained a warrant to search Vicente's residence, a small house on the outskirts of Bambang, on April 19th. What they found was damning. In Vicente's bedroom, they discovered a laptop that contained the Forest Guide 888 email account, still logged in. They found a stash of cash, approximately 180,000 pesos, roughly 3,600 US dollars, hidden in a false bottom of his wardrobe. They found 2 cameras with the serial numbers scratched off, which later analysis would confirm matched models that Marcus and Jade had been carrying. But the most disturbing discovery was in Vicente's shed behind the house. Inside a locked cabinet were bottles of veterinary tranquilizers, the kind used to sedate large animals. Chemical analysis would later match the compounds to the sedatives found in Marcus and Jade's remains. There was also a journal, handwritten in Tagalog, that detailed Vicente's plan in horrifying specificity. He'd been surveying the restricted zone for months, tracking the movements of the enormous python that locals called damalag, giant. He'd observed the snake's hunting patterns, its territory, its preferred ambush locations. His plan was simple and brutal: lure wealthy photographers into the python's territory late at night, drug their food or drinks during the guide session, incapacitate them, and let nature take its course. The python would destroy most forensic evidence through digestion. Any remaining equipment or valuables would be sold through black market channels. "It's the perfect crime," Vicente had written in his journal. "The jungle erases everything. No body, no evidence, no crime. Just another stupid tourist who got lost and died where foreigners don't belong." Vicente Mendoza was arrested on April 20th, 2017, at his workplace, a construction site in Santiago City. He initially denied everything, claiming the laptop and money were from legitimate sources. But when confronted with the journal, the cameras, and the tranquilizers, his story began to crumble. During his third interrogation on April 22nd, Vicente finally confessed, though his version of events was designed to minimize his culpability. According to Vicente, he'd met Marcus and Jade on the night of March 18th as arranged, guiding them through the forest to an area where he knew the python frequented. He'd offered them drinks from his canteen, water laced with crushed sedatives. Within 30 minutes, both were drowsy and disoriented. He led them further into the forest, to a clearing near the old logging road where he'd seen the python several times before. "I just left them there," Vicente claimed. "I didn't kill them. I didn't touch them. I just left them sleeping, and I took their cameras and some money from their bags. I didn't know the snake would find them. I thought they'd wake up confused and find their way back." But investigators didn't believe his version. The blunt force trauma to Marcus's skull suggested Vicente had ensured at least one victim wouldn't wake up. Forensic analysis of the timeline indicated both victims had likely been alive, though unconscious when the python found them. Dr. Reyes provided expert testimony that explained what probably happened next. The python, having likely gone months between large meals, encountered two unconscious humans in its territory. Unable to flee or fight back, they would have been irresistible prey. The snake would have spent hours consuming each victim, a process that would have been impossible if they'd been conscious and struggling. The medical examiner couldn't definitively say whether Marcus and Jade were still alive during the initial stages of consumption, and that uncertainty haunted everyone involved in the case. Remember that cell phone footage Ramon Santos had captured? The video that showed the distended python coiled on the trail? During the trial, prosecutors brought in that footage as evidence, marking the moment that transformed a search and rescue into a murder investigation. That footage proved the timeline, confirmed the location, and visually demonstrated the horrifying reality of how this crime had been committed. Vicente Mendoza's trial began in November 2017 and lasted 3 months. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the emails, the journal, the stolen cameras, the tranquilizers, witness testimony from Catalina Mendoza, and the forensic analysis of Marcus and Jade's remains. Vicente's defense argued that he hadn't directly killed anyone, that the python was the actual killer, and that he should only be charged with robbery and perhaps reckless endangerment. But the prosecution successfully argued that drugging and abandoning two people in a known python habitat with the explicit intention that they would be killed by the animal constituted premeditated murder. The jury deliberated for 6 days. On February 14, 2018, they returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. David Chen and Patricia Walsh were present for the verdict. "It doesn't bring them back," David told reporters outside the courthouse. "Nothing brings them back, but at least we know what happened. At least that monster is going to prison." In the aftermath of the case, the Philippine government implemented new regulations for foreign photographers and researchers working in remote areas. Mandatory guide services from vetted, registered professionals became required. The restricted zones of Bambang Forest were permanently closed to civilian access. The enormous python that had consumed Marcus and Jade died in captivity 3 months after its capture, its digestive system too damaged to recover from the trauma of the necropsy. Marcus and Jade's Instagram account, Wild Lens Adventures, remains online, maintained by David as a memorial. The final post, uploaded the day before they entered Bambang Forest, shows the couple smiling at the camera, jungle behind them, full of hope and excitement for the adventure ahead. The caption reads, "Into the wild. This is what we live for." More than 400,000 comments fill the post now, most of them tributes from followers around the world who'd been inspired by Marcus and Jade's fearless approach to life and nature. Vicente Mendoza was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He's currently incarcerated at New Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa, where he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. Vicente Mendoza was convicted of 2 counts of murder in the first degree, 2 counts of kidnapping, robbery, illegal possession of controlled substances, and wildlife trafficking. He received a sentence of life imprisonment without parole, plus an additional 40 years for the supplementary charges. Marcus Chen was 36 years old. Jade Chen was 32. They'd spent 5 years building a life around their shared passion for the natural world, inspiring hundreds of thousands to appreciate wildlife and conservation. They deserved to grow old together, to continue their work, to share their gift with the world for decades to come. Instead, they became victims of someone who saw them not as people, but as opportunities. someone who weaponized the very nature they loved against them. Their families established the Chen Wildlife Foundation in 2018, which provides safety training and equipment grants to wildlife photographers working in remote locations. Because Marcus and Jade's legacy isn't how they died, it's how they lived, and the wonder they brought to everyone who followed their journey into the wild.